Home and at home, folks, I'll speak up as well. I'm Bob Campbell, also with the Chesapeake office of the National Park Service as the Gateways Planning and Development Manager. My co-workers Bongo here, as you see, and I have tree work going on at home today, so I'm mostly going to be sort of off screen and muted, but I'll spare you the sounds of that. Thanks for joining us today.
Great, super. What we'd like to do is go around and for folks to introduce themselves and the organization that you're with, and then Eddie has some slides to go through to just bring everyone up to the same level of awareness about the grant offering from MPS Chesapeake Gateways, and then we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So I'm just going to go by the list that I have in my participant list. So Liz, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Liz Chateau, and I'm the director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, which is a Maryland State Heritage Area, and our region includes Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties.
Great, thanks, Liz. And Angela?
My name is Angela Hicks. I'm with the Reverend Samuel Green Senior Foundation, and we educate people on social, historical, cultural, and spiritual needs, and work specifically with conservation efforts and watershed issues, and really great to be here.
Great, glad you're here. John Cox?
Yes, good morning. My name is John Cox. I'm representing Steinman Foundation in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Do a lot of things unrelated to these kinds of things, but we have a 2.5 mile trail that we're developing in on the edge of the city here in Lancaster. So I'm curious about this.
Super. Thanks for joining us. And is it Josie?
Yes. I'm Josie Washington. I'm a grant writer with the Mariners Museum and Park. We're in Newport News, so part of Hampton Roads region in Virginia. And we have a 550-acre park, 5-mile trail along the James River, as well as a 167-acre lake. So we're working a lot with environmental education and stewardship.
Super, great. It's so fun, and we'll keep going to hear all the different places people are zooming in from. How about Joseph?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm on the eastern shore of Virginia. I started with a grant from Go Virginia, but a hydrodrone project for mapping, bathymetric mapping of very shallow water, which is what we have here. Then there are autonomous systems. I did this with 4 young students who are now at universities. And what we've done is start to develop it into the beginning of a startup business that does autonomous technology with small boats. As many of you realize, if it's a boat on the shore, it doesn't matter if it's little or big, it's good. So people like it. But it has evolved. We also run 360-degree cameras on it. We've started to support living shorelines. And the creek that I'm most interested in, our particular area on the bay that we're looking at, fits in the time frame between 1620 and 1634. And there are 4 major creeks involved. Hungers, Kings Creek, if you go that far south. And then the one I'm interested in is Occohannock Creek, which forms the boundary between Northampton County and Accomack County. And we've started doing living shorelines. I don't know if do you all know what living shoreline is?
Yeah, we do. And that's great. So thanks, Joseph. I'm going to pass it to
there's one missing piece, which is
sure.
It would be a consortium. It would be the VIMS Eastern Shore Lab, a very large camp run by the Methodists right on the water. And then folks from Gloucester who do living shoreline, ourselves, and then the Coast Guard Auxiliary. What we're forming is a small consortium, and that's what we're interested in finding out, is whether that will work or not.
All right, well, great. So so bring those questions in when we get to that, to the Q&A portion. Deborah?
I'm Deborah Pribola, and I work with Nature Forward, which is the new name for a 125-year-old Audubon Naturalist Society, which does conservation for the entire Washington, D.C. metro region.
Welcome. And Emily?
Hi, my name is Emily Hubner. I am the Assistant Director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. I work with Liz, and our offices are based in Frederick, Maryland.
Super. Hannah?
Hey everyone, I'm Hannah Sobel. I'm based in Hampton Roads. I have a company called Herd Productions, which specializes in audio storytelling, and I am a co-host of a podcast called Your Neighbor's Hood.
Neat. Okay, and let's see, Luke?
Buenos dias, everybody. Luke Miguel Arglaben, Director of Development of the Hispanic Access Foundation. We are a national nonprofit based out of DC, but we operate wherever we have communities across the country. We are not subject matter experts in conservation, although we do a lot of that work. We are bridge builders to communities, bridging access to trusted resources and opportunities to develop the capacity and confidence of leaders to dream big and to take action and take that back to their communities to create sustainable movements in the areas in which impact our community. So very happy to be on this call. Just mostly wanted to say hello and just listen in if I could get any ideas about how to make our proposal even better.
Super, thanks, Luke. Anita?
Hi, I'm Anita Angeloni. I work with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and we're the state, a sort of quasi-state agency tasked with setting aside open space for all over the Commonwealth. And we've got natural area preserve that we're interested in perhaps funding some activities that have been going on there for a while, enhancing and building on what we've been doing there. And also a possible sub-grant idea we've been talking about. And I want to ask later how I can follow up about that. So, all right, thank you.
Super. And we have another member of our team. Sherry, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. Just trying to unstart my video. Good morning, everyone. Sherry Esperson, new hire with MPS Chesapeake. I'm the new partnerships coordinator. So happy to be here and listening in and learning more, but we'll be working directly with the partnerships and grants division. So thanks. Good morning, everyone.
Great. Super. Did I get everyone? I think so. All right. Back to you, Eddie.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. And thanks everybody for joining us. It is great to see the diversity of organizations and geographies represented. This grant series of grants is serving two purposes for us. One is to start making investments in projects in need through the granting process. It opens up another area of support that our office can provide. But it also is helping us understand who is in the boundaries of the watershed, who are the folks doing the kind of work that we want to know about and be in a position to support, not just through grants, but through other resources that we might bring to bear. So welcome and thanks for bringing your ideas to the table. I am going to go back to share my screen so that I can walk through some summary slides. From the introductions, it looks like there's some folks joining us that haven't possibly been part of the previous workshops. We do record everything, as was mentioned earlier, and we have a YouTube playlist that you can get to from our grants page that I'll mention in a second. So you're always able to go back and look at past recordings. We do have some that we go a lot more in detail in the application process and the types of programs and projects we're looking to support. But I am going to summarize them here for everyone's benefit. To start, we do want to highlight that we expect this to be an annual grant opportunity available to you. We may tweak the scopes or objectives of each individual year, based on needs that we're observing within the watershed. But for the most part, you can expect an annual grant opportunity coming out of our office. Generally, it'll be at about $1 million level is what we have budgeted for. But because of the way our budget works and where we are jumping in with this first year, we have over $2 million to spend this first year out. So we're really wanting to make sure that we get a nice diversity of projects. If you've been toying with an idea and been trying to figure out how to get funding for it, we hope that this opportunity is the chance for you to dive in and get some support for something that you might have been contemplating before. We are still, even though we're doubling our funding, we are still looking at the grants in 2 different levels, mainly to judge capacity and size of the programs that are being proposed. So projects in the $25,000 to $50,000 level, and then really the larger grants would be anything over $50,000 to our maximum of $150,000. So between those 2 ranges, the minimum grant is going to be $25,000 and the maximum will be $150,000. But we hope that range gives some good variability to the types of projects that we can support. With this program, we are with these series of grants, we're offering them in 2 different categories. These are 2 of 4 themes that are captured in our strategic plan. And they were the 2 that really lent themselves the best for grant support. The first is inclusive interpretive initiatives. I'll go into more detail in that, but basically it's the what stories are being told, what stories are not being told, who needs to be telling them, and who needs to be hearing them. But beyond that, a really broad sense of the types of stories that we can represent. The second category is resilient communities and landscapes. And this is a pretty broad topic as well. We'll go into more definition, but it's any effort that's bringing attention to community needs or allowing a community to organize to address their own needs, or efforts that help promote and enhance local assets. So things on promotion or branding or strategizing of their own assets would fit into this category. Beyond those 2 thematic categories, we are emphasizing that through the grants, we hope to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and community engagement. Again, very broad in all the different ways that might become a part of your project. But we do want these grants to help push the needle forward a bit on 1 or more of these areas through your projects. We're also very happy to report that because of the way our legislation is designed, we were able to provide this opportunity with no match requirement. So really the funds that you're going to need for your project are the funds that you're going to be requesting, and they would ideally be the funds that you're going to get awarded. So you don't have to worry about trying to find additional monies to bring to the table. That doesn't mean that your project can't be a bigger project than the $150,000 max we're providing, but that you don't have to secure a match in order to apply for the funds you're going to be requesting. We're also very happy that this opportunity is available to a broad range of eligible entities, including the private sector. And the private sector could be everybody from traditional outfitters that are getting people out on the water to the historic farms and ranches that exist in the watershed, to some of the other historic trades that have really driven a lot of the activities along the watershed. We're really anxious to see what we see as far as proposals from some of these eligible entities. I do want to highlight that because these are grants, they have to have a public purpose, which means that there needs to be some benefit that is conveyed to some segment of the general public. The part of the public is for you to define. You could be targeted in who you want to benefit based on the objectives that you're shooting for. But beyond that, you do have to show that there is a public purpose to your grant, and the activity has to occur within the Chesapeake watershed. Organizations from outside the watershed can apply, but the projects would need to be based in the watershed itself. We're doing these office hours to answer any questions you might have so that everybody can get sufficient time to work through the proposal process to meet our January 30th deadline. This is a hard deadline, just the way our processes work. Once that deadline passes, the site closes, and we aren't able to accept any additional applications. So please put that deadline in your calendars. And all of this is captured in a lot more detail on our grants landing page, which you see the URL to there, and we'll put it in the chat as well. I did want to emphasize the range of eligible entities. I think from everybody in the introductions that I heard, you all should see yourself in some category represented here on this list. It's very broad, so we definitely want to capitalize on everybody that's in the watershed. I'm going to do a quick little bit more deeper dive into the two grant categories that we're going to be focusing on so that you get a sense of the wide range that we're looking for. For advancing major interpretive initiatives, this is really anything that engages underrepresented places or audiences to those places, where you're helping to tell underrepresented or a fuller story than what might currently exist, and where you're facilitating galvanizing conservation and quality of life messaging, and then strengthening a ladder of engagement for any population that you might be targeting. I did want to highlight, because I heard it come up earlier when somebody mentioned they didn't have a conservation background. The watershed represents a range of stories, people, and places. These are not place-based grants that we are looking for. So you could represent a story or a community, and that would be your focus. And it doesn't have to necessarily be conservation focused. We also represent history, culture, and recreation. So all four of those are eligible backdrops to the projects that you might be bringing to the table. Let me get to, and then within this, some examples that we'd be looking for are projects that are developing meaningful relationships between an audience and a story or a place or a community, or where they're able to more fully understand the stories within the watershed and the diversity they represent. Any projects that are linking culture and nature, or as I mentioned, culture and recreation, or culture and history, those would be the types of projects that we'd like to be investing in. And then on the building ladders of engagement, one example could be focusing in on youth and doing some form of a workforce development / career exposure type program. Anything that's moving an audience across some experiential ladder. On promoting resilient communities and landscapes here, again, very broad in what we're looking to support. Any projects that are promoting or marketing a part of the watershed experience, and not just on the recreation, but on the conservation, culture, and history side. Projects that are promoting a stewardship ethic, so those connections to why we care for the watershed as an asset. And then facilitating collaborations amongst community organizations or civic organizations, or just anybody that's out there doing the work that you want to be supporting at the local level. And because of that focus on DEIJ and community engagement, we're looking for projects that advance equitable access to the outdoors, for example, or equitable access to a particular resource where barriers might currently exist. And through all of this, we are helping to projects that are helping to grow the landscape of heritage-based sustainable economies, how to bring more attention and people to all these great communities across the watershed. Some examples include, making public lands and open spaces more accessible and welcoming. How do we get to audiences a message of that these places are for them? And then watershed-wide land conservation and public access collaborations. A lot of the issues facing communities are very similar across the watershed. So how can we connect some of those communities together? Projects that link nature-based and cultural tourism of the gateways. Where can we make connections between these stories and highlight them to audiences? And then just the connection to underrepresented communities through inclusive programming. And that could really take many forms, like events and festivals at the local level. And ultimately, our goal is to engage new audiences. Let's bring more stakeholders to the table. To close, on the programmatic side, I did want to highlight that these are investments that we're looking to make. So we're looking for how to prioritize those investments through the review process. Ideally, we're looking at proposals that are elevating a scope or an audience of an existing program, or proposals that are expanding programming to address a particular barrier that you would be in the best position to define and address. And proposals that are kicking off a new strategy. I mentioned earlier with the 2.2 million, any idea that you might have had that we're looking for a source of support, we're hoping that this would be, a kind of a catalytic opportunity for you. We did want to highlight that looking at these priorities, we are going to be considering whether funding is being asked for projects that are more in the annual maintenance or operations level. Again, we want to be making these investments and the outcomes that might come out of them. So, projects that are really just supporting your annual budget might not compete as well. So just something to think about. And then the reviewers in the landing page, we go through a lot of detail into what each of these review categories entail. We also list the percentages here so you can kind of see how they're weighted. Definitely go through them as you're writing your proposal and use it kind of as a checklist. We do have a checklist as well that you can follow along, and it includes all the different things that you need to be considering to make your project competitive given these review criteria. But to start, we're going to be looking at the connection to the strategic themes that we laid out. Those are the areas where we want to make impact. So we want to make sure that these proposals match those themes. And then that connection to equity, inclusion, accessibility, and engagement. Don't leave it to chance that the reviewers are going to understand what you mean. Make sure you spell it out in how you're connecting to DEIJ and community engagement. And then the intent of the project itself, what are you looking to accomplish? What are your expected outcomes? The operational plan is really how are you setting out a plan to address that? And the team's capacity, who are you putting up as the folks that are going to do this? We are providing opportunity for 2 optional elements in the narrative, project team resumes and letters of support. And those can be used to help reinforce some of these elements, like the operational plan and the implementation team. So take a look at that. And then finally, just be mindful of that deadline. It is a hard deadline. Once we close, we'll go into review process. Wendy mentioned earlier, this is the first year we've done something at this scale, running through our official grant process. So a lot of this is still TBD on turnaround times or what comes next. But we are targeting, hopefully, an award process to be finalized in late summer once we go through all the award negotiations. All right. Thank you for indulging me in that little summary. And now the rest is just going to be kind of an open forum of questions. I see that some chat questions have come in and
those were largely all me putting in resources for everyone. So we don't have any questions yet. So
Gotcha.
maybe we'll take down the slides and just open it up for folks.
Yeah. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and jump in if we've got a first person.
Yes, I'm Angela Hicks with the Reverend Samuel Green organization. My question is, and I'm sorry, I'm traveling. My question is, if you can you cut across using more than one of the 4 or 5 areas? We want to focus on the outcomes area of number 4, but we also would like to tell a story, about some of the communities and what's happening there.
Yes, you can cover both of the strategic themes in your project if that's the way you're designing your project. Each project is going to be reviewed individually, so as long as you're in that $150,000 cap, you can have whatever project you want to propose within that. I do want to also mention you can submit more than one project for anybody that's considering that as well. But definitely you can cut across the both themes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Has anybody started going through the SAM.gov unique entity identifier process? Any questions related to that? I did hear from someone earlier this week that when I did the test run a month ago, it was about a 3-day lag between when I got my first correspondence. They waited almost 2 weeks. So if you haven't started, definitely jump in with that SAM.gov process to get your unique identity identifier. You will need that in order to apply.
Yes, we did it, and it did take more than 2 weeks actually. So it's
Okay.
it's a lengthy process.
Yes.
All right, we have Elizabeth and then Luke with questions.
Hi, so in the heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, we have a couple of things, and Emily, who's with us today, can talk about the project that might be unique to our heritage area. But we're one of 13 heritage areas in Maryland, and there's some conversation happening among the directors of those heritage areas, and perhaps some of them were on the call yesterday. So you might have already heard about this, but there's some conversation about whether we can approach this program for funds that we would then re-grant as a part of a mini grant process that we offer. And right now that requires our grantees to be able to come up with matching funds. If we found a way to use our state dollars for mini grants with federal dollars, it might be a way to eliminate matching requirements for our state mini grant recipients, and then and that could align with all the things that you all have described as priorities for this program. So what is your thought about re-granting?
Yeah, it didn't come up in the context, Liz, of the state heritage areas yesterday, but there was a question along these lines yesterday about re-granting. And we need to, as Eddie was saying, this is the first time out the gate for us. So we need to do some internal little research and homework to understand if and how we would be able to do that, because there's been multiple questions along these lines. In just the basics of how the grants work, the way we're going to sort of go up the line and ask the question is, there is the ability to have sub-recipients of grants. What we're not clear on is whether those need to be understood up front as you're applying on who the subrecipients are, or whether they can, in essence, be identified after the fact. If to answer to say we don't know the answer and that we're going to be looking into it, we maintain, one of the last links that I put in the chat is our FAQ page for the grants. And that is where we would put both the sort of a generalized frame of this sort of question that's now come up several times and have the answer to. So we will try to get on that pretty quickly, because we now have about a month and a half remaining before the deadline to submit. I think our office is really interested in the concept. We're not sure if we're able to execute it under this current offering. And it might, let's say we can't, then we'd want to, as Eddie was saying, we're learning, and this is going to continue to be an annual process for us. And if there is this need out there, maybe there's a separate process that we define it up front very clearly in the announcement that that's an opportunity. So I think it's something that we want to understand for this current one, whether we can do it, and then look ahead at other ways to achieve the concept in the future.
So thank you, Wendy. Just two things as you're exploring that. My guess is that if we actually would need to be able to identify sub-grant recipients, we might not be ready for that in January, but it might be something if we knew it could be possible, you know, a year later we would come in. And then another thing that might be helpful as well, if I don't know if you can give us this kind of guidance, but you know, we're 13 autonomous independent organizations, but we work together as a coalition, and we're also you know, tied in with the state Maryland Heritage Areas Authority. And so whether you'd rather see a big grant or a lot of little grants, if the door was open for this sort of thing, might also be of interest.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to get a sense of that.
Thank you.
Luke?
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So a little bit more technical, and I appreciate, Elizabeth, your input, and I'll mention why here soon. First, I'd like to get an understanding of when you might announce awards, and then also whether those payments will be made lump sum or if they are the accrual style of like getting the money.
The timing is hopefully sometime in mid to late summer. That's the big TBD for us because this is our first grant offering. We don't have a sense of how long it takes to get it through the approval process. You know, that's through the region and the headquarters office. But that's the time frame that we'd be shooting for. We do use a reimbursable system for payments. But you know, when this question's come up before, I think there is a negotiation process in the award process. So any accommodations, you know, could be addressed in that process. But you know, for the most part, most of these are set up as reimbursables, and it's run through ASAP, the federal you know, payment request system. My understanding, it's a pretty quick turnaround, but I know some folks have had different experiences with getting reimbursed on these kind of grants. So it's something that we're going to be monitoring as well during the process.
Excellent. Thank you for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and very familiar with the ASAP system, and the most of our federal partnerships is the reimbursable mechanism. So nothing we don't already know how to do, but for the sub-granting, the re-granting, during Latino Conservation Week, which is kind of the mechanism that we are thinking this grant may apply, you know, that provides, it's an opportunity to provide resources to communities that want to engage in outdoor recreation, explore cultural heritage, and the history and stories that make up our identity and our narrative in the outdoors. And so that can be applied and scaled in the Chesapeake Bay Area. The way that, and I don't think typically, well, one, we would not have those partners immediately identified by January, but we also they don't need to be registered as a nonprofit. Oftentimes they're families or local community members. So I'm going to think creatively, and if I have any questions, I'll follow up with you on how that may or may not work. And it could be that, you know, we organize directly, which is not a problem. But we like to give communities flexibility to do things their way.
Understood.
Yeah, but it's good feedback for you, and it's also great for me to be thinking strategically about how we can best steward these resources. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Luke.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, I guess I will.
Josie, and then John. Oh, sorry, Eddie.
Well, I just wanted to add that, you know, that's also an example of, you know, this is one opportunity and one mechanism for us to be supporting, but you're representing scales of need that could end up being collaborations or partnerships or some other method for us to be exploring, you know, how to work together. So definitely, if you get to a proposal, awesome. If there's conversations that need to be had on a different level, let's have those as well, you know. Thanks.
My question might be a little more in the weeds, sorry, but for a project that is on the making public access to land and more welcoming, are there any restrictions or issues if this was to be funding for a larger project as far as any other vendors or partners that we would be working with in kind for the infrastructure side of things? We had run into that with a different grant, and so that's why I was wanting to ask.
I mean, I guess, you know, how you present how the project will be achieved, if there are other partners and other whether it's funding or in-kind support, you could spell that out so it's clear how the MPS dollars are being leveraged or being utilized to achieve a larger whole. That is completely okay. If there are things that you already feel like could be a red flag, I don't know exactly what that would be. You know, yeah, I'm not sure an example of how an outside entity might be considered a concern.
Okay.
Yeah, another thing to consider is whether you're putting them into the budget or is it just someone doing work outside of what you're asking for the funding. You know, if they're not part of the funding that you're requesting, just part of a larger project,
right,
they're not really within.
Versus a contractor that you're going to have on like a line item of your budget, right?
Right. Yeah. I think maybe because there was since you don't have a match, but this would be a part of a larger.
It is okay to have projects that are larger, and you're just identifying what the NPS grant portion of the budget will be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I did put my email address or the program's email address in the chat. So with these kinds of questions, if there's something that you might want to follow up more directly, send a note there and we'll arrange some more direct feedback to you.
All right, John is up next and then Anita.
Oh, you're on mute, John.
I think I know the answer to the question, but I want to make sure I'm understanding. So we're building a trail in phases. Part of that, the intention of that trail will be to have a lot of educational opportunity along it. It is got diversity and inclusion assumptions built into what we're attempting to do. So without getting into the details of that, am I correct in my reading that there's none of this funding would be eligible for use in the actual infrastructure of the building of the trail? This is strictly the educational and interpretive sides of it.
Oh, you're on mute, Wendy.
The funding can be used for capital projects as well. So if there was a portion of the project that 100, you know, between 25 and 150 could go to the sort of literal building of the trail, that would be eligible as long as you met all the, you know, you fit within one of the two strategic themes and you met all the criteria. And then as you apply, there's then decisions about which forms to use, because there's a form if you're doing the construction yourselves as a grant recipient, that's one form. If you're going to have a contractor do it, it's the standard sort of program form.
Yeah, and so is there a percentage that would be allowed for trail or?
Yeah.
No, okay.
I mean, I think a question any kind of larger construction project would want to think through, you know, not necessarily specific to a trail or otherwise, is it going to be, is it a piece that could stand alone? Or is it a case that without other pieces, it's not finished. And then thinking through, how does that get presented as a strong application?
Yeah, I think I follow. So I'll just give a hypothetical real quick and then I'll start because I think I know where you're going. Let's just assume I had $500,000 worth of construction that included signage and educational. And I was going to use 150 of this for that. What I think I hear you saying is, could the 150 piece stand alone?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise, it's just part of a larger construction project and might not be a desirable.
Well, and or if the total cost is 150 and you're using, 500,000 and you're using 150 for a portion of it, if you only have 200 in hand, then you don't really have a ready to go project to be completed. So the 150 wouldn't be able to stand alone because you don't have, the other dollars in hand. So that would be, I think the reviewers would see that as it's not really a full ready to go project.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. That's good. I'll be talking to you some more. Thank you.
All right, Anita and then Lisa.
Hi, I'm actually asking today about a different, because we'd also like to apply for our Bull Run Mountains Natural Area Preserve. There's a lot of interpretive work going on there, as well as community outreach. And there's a lot of moving parts to it. So, and I don't want to get too much down in the weeds with this exactly, but the grant would be building, enhancing, and expanding work that we're already doing. So that qualifies. There are just some components that we're not sure if they're fundable or not. And I'd like to, if we came to you with a project with multiple components, and some were definitely eligible, some maybe a little not, would it be on you to sift through that and understand and fund parts of it? Would you do that, or that doesn't happen?
The application should be clear on what you're asking for the dollars to, go towards. So it would be clear in the budget breakdown what you're looking for the funds to go to. I mean, it's our first time going through this, right? But I wouldn't imagine there's going to be an independent review panel that reviews this. So it's not Eddie, Bob, and I looking at these until it's already been through the rating and ranking review panel. So whatever everyone sends in needs to be so clean and clear that the outside review panel is able to judge it against the criteria. So I wouldn't, any application shouldn't put it on them to figure out what you're asking for.
Right. Okay. And so then my other questions are about eligibility for certain components. Is this the right place to ask you about?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we've got some possible components that we're thinking about are funds to support fellowships with an BCU in partnership with with the Department of with DHR actually. Then we've got we'd like to ask for funds for a story map, which I think is good, right? Funds for a professional genealogist. Okay. And
I just to kind of, is it for like a discrete project? That one of the things that Eddie mentioned when he was going through is that these dollars aren't meant for operational funds, right? So if the genealogist is really just on staff and ongoing work, maybe not so much. But if it's a discrete research project, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And the last one, which I think is also thumbs up, but I'm going to say it anyway. We've got a growing Black History hike program on the preserve, and we need funds to support transportation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Lisa.
All right. So we are working with two similar ideas. that both look at plantation landscapes and really cultural landscapes on plantations using Whitehall as a case study. And one idea is really focusing on kind of creating a more working group of county and state kind of heads and minds coming together of architectural, archaeology, oral history, genealogy, descendant communities, environmental, all coming together, working together to come up with a cultural landscape plan for the Whitehall Peninsula.
Wow.
And what will be happening there. The other idea that we're floating is also very similar, but working more with descendant communities and using community organizations and gatherings with foodways and really focusing on gathering oral histories, because at recent excavations, we've had younger generations coming out saying, oh, my great aunt or oh, my grandmother, they won't talk to my mom, but they talk to me all the time.
Oh, interesting.
I can get them to tell stories, but my mom will never talk.
Yeah.
And also the ride outs have been collecting family histories and things like that. So really focusing more on collecting those histories and transcribing them. And then also getting descendant communities to help inform future excavations, and then doing more excavations. So one is
all thumbs up.
Okay. So would you push us in one direction over the other? Or would you want us to mash them together?
So, so we can advise on how to put your application, like we can advise on sort of what's eligible and the sort of things that can be funded, but we can't help you apply, which is this weird fine line that that we're in. So I think, you know, the cap is 150. And if there are applicants here that have many good ideas that that maybe add up to more than the 150, as Eddie said, you could submit more than one application. So that's an option. If all the things fit within the 150, it is okay to have an application that has multiple deliverables and outcomes and hits both, you know, strategic plans. Strategic themes. So, you know, so I think that's a strategy for each of the applicants to think through. Eddie also pointed out this year is a rare year where we have double the amount that we typically will with 2 million. So we're really hoping we, you know, have lots of great projects that get submitted, because we will be able to fund so many this year.
Okay.
When is the deadline for application submission? I'm
January
sorry.
30th.
All right.
Thank y'all. And I lost my question. Never mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, looks like Elizabeth, you have another question.
Yes. So a two-part question. One is will the grant consider paying for staff time that is dedicated to the project that's being proposed? And then the second part of that is if you are going to hire contractors using the grant, how much do you need to know in advance? I know there's going to be a federal procurement process involved. What, you know, how do we share where we want to head with those contractors in terms of selection and the type of and group we might want to work with.
So definitely yes on your first question about staff time. If it's project related, definitely put that in the budget. And then with the contractors, my understanding is, you're putting in your budget what your contract line is expected, and then so in the narrative, just reference what that contract budget line is going to support. And there is expectation that it would be a bidded out process. So you would just need to reference how you would be identifying the contractor for that line item.
And can you offer some advice for those of us that, we might be contracting for something in an area where it's a new area of work for us. So we may not have a really good feel for, what kind of amount to ask for in a line item when we haven't bid the project out yet. How do we, what is your advice for getting something reasonable in that budget that also, it works from the federal standpoint?
Yeah, that's probably a little harder.
Wendy, I'll try to give at least some guidance on that right away. If I'm not sure that I completely understand the question, but just, when you all are as applicants are submitting, it's always helpful to think about on the receiving end. You have a panel, and they're looking at your budget. They're looking for as much clarity as possible. If they, so do the best you can to justify the basis for your costs in any of your budget line items. If we advance to award, then this is the secret, right? This is the secret sauce. The awarding officer has to be able to assess 3 different things to verify your budget. The first is all the costs are allowable. And there are some things that are, excluded from federal funding. Think about entertainment and parties and any of that sort of stuff. Not hard to avoid that. The next is that they're allocated among the right line items of personnel, fringe, things like that. That's not something that's going to trip up your proposal as it's being evaluated. There just may be some adjustment of the cost within the line items. But the last thing is that they have to be able to assess that your costs are reasonable. So the only way to do that is the only way that you can figure that out yourself, and that is understand what the cost basis is. And the cost basis most fundamentally is units and unit costs, right? Even if it's a contract for professional services, you're going to be projecting, well, how long might it take somebody to do it? If you're going to include a contractual line item and you have any basis for your estimate, prior experience, or you've talked to a colleague with another organization that did those kinds of things, that's the kind of stuff that you need to put in there. And it's just, building that is important for you to know how much to ask for, and it will be put to the test when it's time to actually do the budget negotiations for award. I don't know if that helps at all, Liz, or maybe it's all just stuff you already know.
I would say it helps a bit, but here's my question. When we're doing that sort of market research to try to figure out what's reasonable, can I ask potential contractors for kind of generic ballpark information and then come back to them and ask them to bid on a project?
I don't know of any other way, right? Like I don't know how else you would find the sample cost.
I don't know of any other way either.
Okay.
What you can't do is to ask for that kind of guidance and then have that constitute a pre-selection of that specific consultant.
Okay.
When it comes time to make the final award. The rules of competition would essentially be the rules of 3. You're going to have to seek at least three competitive bids, and so you would reach past that person to other folks. But if you can find somebody that would consult, then That's certainly a helpful way to do it.
That's helpful. We've run into some issues in this arena with some other projects, so I just want to make sure we're very clean. But thank you, that does help.
Yeah, if you know anybody that's done a similar project, maybe getting an estimate from them on what their end cost ended up being.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we are at time, but we have 2 more questions. I just want to check that Wendy, Eddie, and Bob, you're good to hang on a little bit so we can get Deborah and Hannah's questions answered.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Great. Deborah.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for all the help you're providing and the workshops and the handy application checklist. We're a regional conservation organization, and for this project, we might want to be partnering with some local watershed groups. And if we wanted to pass any of the grant through to them, I'm a little confused still about whether there can be sub-recipients, and would they, I think they need to be registered in sam.gov, but then if they're partners, they're not a contractor, so where would they fall? Would they be allowed, and would they have to be in sam.gov?
Subrecipients do need to be in sam.gov, so that's one answer. But then your overall question is similar to the one that we need to do some homework and research on about sort of sub granting, and so overall we will work on getting an answer to that and putting it into the FAQ, and then we have we'll have the ability to sort of let folks know that update has gone into the FAQ, to go sort of find the answer to that. So sorry for not having that answer on hand right now, but we'll work to get that quickly.
So you're not sure there can be subrecipients?
There can be subrecipients that are specific to the project that's being proposed. I think the question we'll be trying to answer is, can you sub-grant, which is maybe, sort of slightly different than subrecipient. Subrecipient is an entity is identified to complete a portion of the project that you've submitted. Sub-granting is giving funds down to a third party who is doing its own sort of standalone project. So I think that's where we're trying to understand, is there a difference? And if there is, are we able to do sub-grants versus sub-recipient to complete work of a defined project?
I'm sorry,
I'm
still confused. These would be partners,
Deborah,
would be doing part of our overall project.
Yeah, if you already know who they are, that you just need to ensure that they're in sam.gov, so that then you can list them in your budget and in your narrative as a component of your project. That's if they are already known. Yes, you can write that in. They would need to be in sam.gov, but that is your subrecipients of that you're defining in your proposal.
And would they be listed? How would they show up in the budget?
Under whatever category you're spending that money in, whether it's.
Is it contracting? Is it something else? Is it other?
I'm going to try to come online and see if I can help a little bit, and forgive me if there's noise in the background. Again, I have tree work being done today. So what we're looking for from you is clarity about a project, a specific scope that we'll need to understand, and a budget associated with that's rational and reasonable. If you have partners who are integral to providing the deliverables that you are going to say your project is going to provide, then those partners would probably want to be reflected in a couple of different ways. A letter of support and commitment from those specific partners would be important. If they are providing professional services, or they are among the personnel costs that you're trying to do, as Eddie said, have them appear where they appear within the primary budget categories, which again are, personnel, fringe benefits, supplies, equipment, contractual travel. So, let's just picture for a moment, you might have a partner who's donating building material. So they're donating supplies. They're going to show up there. You might have a partner who's bringing a certain expertise that's necessary to the project that your organization can't provide. So their letter would say, we're happy to be involved in this project, to be, to serve as a consulting landscape architect. And so they would show up in personnel costs. If you're going to contract for services, that's not a subrecipient, that's a contract, and that's going to go in there. But if you're describing essential roles for other organizations than your own as the primary recipient, and money needs to flow to them to support their costs in making the project, then they're going to be a subrecipient. We've had a lot of questions about whether or not we can grant funds through, and y'all just have to bear with us that we're gonna give you a solid answer for that. But understand, we didn't specifically in the NOFO ask for proposals for subgranting, so don't be too optimistic about that, right? That would have need to have been described in the notice of funding opportunity. And so I think that pretty much covers what the ground the best that we can for right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Hannah, you put your hand down. Do you still have a question?
It was just a quick thing. I just wanted to follow up. You said it can't be used for entertainment or parties, but does that exclude also like a launch event to kick off your project?
Bob, you're on mute.
Yeah, in the notice of funding opportunity, there's going to be a reference to the controlling document for all awards that we make. We're controlled by it. You're controlled by it. It's 2 CFR 200 to the Code of Federal Regulations. If you just Google allowable costs, then it's gonna make clear to you what is allowable and what is not. I gave you just sort of a flippant, truncated version because it was the most easily understood, that it's like no throwing parties, right?
Got it. Thank you.
And I think things that are community engagement and project awareness are different than tickets to a play that is outside your project alignment, sort of entertainment in the sense of almost like buying access, things like that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Exciting to hear about the ideas that you all are working on. Again, the end date, the deadline is January 30th. So we've got some time after the new year. We hope everyone has wonderful time with their family and are continuing to work on great ideas to submit. Eddie put in the chat the email to our email for the grants, Chesapeake_grants@mps.gov. So if there's more questions, please send them in there. We will have likely, Eddie, are you planning additional workshops in January?
Yes, just because we want to make sure everybody gets to success on a proposal. Starting in January, we're going to be having office hours every Tuesday, I believe. And then that last week before proposals are due, we're going to be having office hours every day. So still plenty of time to get some questions answered after the new year.
All right. safe holidays. Thank you all for working on great projects, and we'll see everyone in the new year.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.